in a few seconds here. We are streaming. So I will say, as I generally do to the Facebook Live audience, welcome. For those of you who it's your first time here, thanks for joining us. For those of you who are in the room who don't know, we are in fact streaming to Facebook Live right now as we speak. So just be aware that you are being recorded and streamed, and if you have any questions or concerns about that, probably shouldn't be in a live streaming broadcast. But with that said, give me just a few moments here because I'm still setting up some of the basics in the Facebook live stream, because I'm guessing that those people there probably already have a few people in there. And there is Francis Wong. Welcome once again, Francis. You actually beat me to pinning and posting our initial Facebook comment, which is always the, hey, say hello. For those of you who don't know, if you've never been here before, we are streaming live to Facebook for those who cannot get into the Verbella platform. It does happen on occasion, although generally most people will join us in Verbella. And with that, I will also say we do interact live with the people who can't join us in Verbella. So the people who are watching on Facebook on the live stream, they have the ability to comment. And when they comment, because the majority of this event is going to be for the audience. So a lot of times our Facebook audience might send us some questions, and when they do, we want to read those questions in the room so that the panel can answer them. But that said, this event does, I'm now noticing that the Facebook live stream is, did I not transition quickly? Maybe I didn't. Moment. There we go. Sorry, I was just trying to make sure that the Facebook live stream is in fact streaming. There we go. Now I've caught back up to live. Sorry, I'm always watching on the Facebook Live producer. My preview screen is actually not showing me the actual live broadcast, but I'm watching it on Facebook as well, and that does seem to be showing me the live broadcast. So anyway, as I was saying, we will read audience comments from the Facebook live stream into the room when we have Q&A sessions, so that our, those of us who can't be in Verbella can also interact live just like everybody else. But we will get started. We have some open networking, let people filter in another 12 minutes or so. So feel free to just, walk around the space, talk to other people. As we get to about a 5-minute warning, I will put seats in the room for us to all sit in. And then at that point, we can get started. And I will have the speakers, Tony, Evan, and Jeffrey, join me. And is Tony in the room right now? Actually, I need to talk to Tony. Someone's clapping. I'm assuming that's him.
He should be behind you. Yeah, Tony's right here.
All right, I got to look around. Pardon me while I go move around. Because I am going to... Is it Bevilacqua?
That's the one.
All right. I just want to make sure. I have a terrible habit of not checking with people ahead of pronouncing their last name. And so
it's like drink water. Bevilacqua.
Bevilacqua. All right. Cool. I want to make sure I get it right. That's all.
Oh, it looks like we're doing a meeting in this one.
I can tell somebody's watching it on Facebook and has their microphone. I'm guessing it's Masha.
And Evan and Tony, just FYI, we did put Jeff at the end, so it'll be Tony, then Evan, and then Jeff.
Perfect. Sounds good.
And there's Jeffrey. Hey, Jeffrey.
Hello.
How are things at Vario? Am I saying it correctly?
Yes, you are. Thanks.
Thank you. I said it 4 or 5 different ways, and then finally someone from the company, like about 2 years ago, said, no, it's Vario. I'm like, okay, cool. But then I heard someone else say it wrong, and I started questioning myself again. So
yeah, it's the Finnish word for shadow, and they pronounce it slightly different. They go Vario. They sort of roll it.
Oh, they roll it. Ooh, fancy. Vario.
Slightly.
All right, I'll do my best.
Vario has some killer test use cases. I've been watching helicopter training certification hours approved by the European Aviation Agency on one of those cool pneumatic platforms, with a
Oh,
VR
wow.
helmet strapped to your face. It counts for pilot training. Yeah, cool videos too, showing simultaneous real life, sitting on the platform, and then what the trainee sees.
Very
You
cool.
got some fans, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks.
I enjoyed the experience I got to try when I was up in Vancouver. It was cool. I have not seen it since, unfortunately. Today is definitely one of the days where I will be sitting down presenting, so I apologize if you guys hear my chair creaking, but I have been on my feet since approximately 8:30 this morning, so. And again, welcome everybody in the room, guys. Feel free to open up your mic, talk to people, say hello, introduce yourself. This is the networking portion of the event, so if you're all talking, it's a lot easier to actually network with you. See who's in the room. I'm going to pick out people at random. So is it Roko Haro?
Yes, it is. Hello.
Said that correctly. Excellent. Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to
I
meet
don't
you
think
too.
I've seen you at one of these events before. Is this your first time through?
It is my first time here. Yeah.
Excellent. How'd you find us?
I think somewhere on LinkedIn maybe.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm breaking into the VR space myself. Started a company last year and we'll be having a soft launch in November.
Pretty cool. What do you do?
Do 3D video conferencing. So you could say similar to Verbella without the avatars. So more similar to Frame VR or spatialweb.net.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah, or similar to spatialweb.net.
When's did you say you launched already or no?
No, we're still working on the technology.
So VRAR Chicago is an organization. We actually evaluate pretty much every platform we ever come across. So when you do, please send us an email because we sort of, again, we consult with live events and associations and groups like that to tell them what platforms are out there and what their capabilities are and all of those fun things. And so if you have a platform, we should definitely take a look at it once it launches and see if we can sort of add it to our roster to potentially recommend to people.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Should I just find you on LinkedIn or how do you connect in Verbella?
Well, actually, if you click on my name, you should be able to see kind of like my title up in the list on the top left. If you click on me, you should be able to view my profile, and in there is my LinkedIn, so you can connect with me there. For VRAR Chicago, for all of us, you can always just reach out to us on vrarchicago.com and hit the info link and just let us know, hey, we talked in the event about this. I got a platform. We'll know who you are.
Okay, cool. Yeah, noted. I'll definitely follow up with you guys once the technology is ready to be played with. It's actually really cool stuff because we're also in its infancy. It's gonna be just vanilla video, but towards the end of next year, we're gonna be sprinkling machine learning here and there on the video itself to enhance communication.
Excellent.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to be a much more like premium experience. So it's challenging to offer some type of more like social experience or enter like the education market. So we're gearing more towards like event agencies.
Very nice.
Yeah, definitely want to talk to Chris and Tom. And
Yeah,
let's see who else. I know we've been talking to Emily a bit. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with Sandra. Hello, Sandra. Sandra looks new.
Yes.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi. So, sorry. Did you ask me a question?
I was just saying hello. That's all.
We're here. Hey, how are you?
And I will also say hello to Stephen Halitzer, who is joining us via Facebook, and apparently looking forward to a face-to-face sometime soon, which would be great. He said hi on Facebook, so I'm saying hi back. And I see Spiff. And we'll see who else comes in shortly. We got about a 5-minute warning until the actual event starts, although it looks like all my speakers are here, so that's great. Makes it very easy to organize people. So in a few minutes, I'll put the tables in the space, and then everyone can sit down, and we can get, we'll get going with the event right around 6:15. So welcome Reggie, welcome Spiff, Orlando again. I know I said hello before, but I'll say it again. See who else. Ben, once again. Jay's back in. Reza. Hey, Reza.
Hey, what's up?
All right, we got people filtering in. This is great. So weird. Everyone's always so hesitant to like random network at the beginning of the event, and then by the end of the event, everyone's like, no. We're all just talking in circles and standing in places. It's great, but we'll get there. It's okay. We're kind of used to this at this point. We've only been doing it for. And it's weird to think about the fact that we've spent over a year and a half doing this virtually.
Matt, for this networking part, you need to be having some bar staff circulating gently with, beers and cocktails and non-alcoholic beverages.
Is that your way of saying that you need one? Because I mean, I've got mine, but I can't speak for everybody else.
The ambiance.
We need to do the networking in the speakeasy, I guess, which is another campus location here. We could do that next time, maybe.
No, we could do that next time, yeah.
We got about 3 minutes, so I'm at the point now. What does F to F mean? Face to face, Francis? Sorry, that was a Facebook comment. What do the acronyms stand for? Yeah, F to F, face to face. All right, so I'm going to put the seating in, and I believe it's this one. There we go, so that everybody who is not on the panel can take a seat. That would be lovely. In the near future, I'll mute the audience, but not quite yet. I will do that right about 6:15 when we get started. But in the meantime, it'd be useful if you're in the audience to just please take a seat at one of the spots, one of the tables. I know Chris and Tom will kind of be watching throughout the event just to make sure we don't, there has been incidences of trolling in the past in virtual space. And so we tend to look for people who are standing when they should be sitting. And those are the people who we watch and, in case they need to be kicked out, things like that. There's also just people who don't know what they're doing and they accidentally, navigate their way through the space and walk up to the stage. We're aware this happens. It is new technology. Not everybody is used to it yet, but thank you everybody who's here so far sitting down. This is great. Yeah, we got about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to let other people filter in and then we'll get the event started.
Hey, Matt, I just want to introduce Spiff Whitfield sitting next to me. Because of him, I came to my first ever Verbella conference 2 years ago.
And who is that? I'm sorry?
Spiff.
Oh, Spiff?
Yes, he's named himself after Spaceman Spiff from the famous Calvin and Hobbes comics.
Ah. I was curious if the Whitfield was actually a reference to Secret of My Success.
Everyone, I know there's some new people in here today, so just letting you know there's some controls at the top of your screen to zoom in on screens if anything's blocking them.
How do you turn your head again?
You can use the space bar.
Okay, thanks.
What's fun is I've actually met people in real life whose last name is Whitfield, and I always think Carlton Whitfield from Secret of My Success, which is Michael J. Fox's alter ego. All right. Always happy if you can learn something new, Francis. Again, responding to Facebook comments for those of you in the room. We are right about 6:15 though, so I am going to get started. So give me a few moments. At this point, I will be muting the audience, just so you know. And I'll go through a really quick overview. So once again, thank you everybody who is here, and for those who will be joining shortly. Thanks for those of you who are joining us on Facebook Live as well, both now and in the future. For those of you who have never been here before, this is VR Chicago. We are going to be talking about immersive technology use in research today. This is an event, it's a monthly event series. We do this every single month. We have been doing this every month for, I dare say, over 4.5 years at this point. The last 1.5 years in virtual space exclusively, although we did used to hold it live. And before I really get too far into the content of the actual event itself, I do want to say thank you to our sponsors. I know we have a representative of at least one of our sponsors in the room, so I will have him come up shortly. But we would not be able to do this event if it was not for the help that we get from our sponsors. So Anthony, are you introducing Bundle AR today?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. I will let you get to that right now, and I will get out of the way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Matt. Good night, everybody. Hope you're doing okay tonight. My name is Anthony Colon, and I am the marketing coordinator at Bundle AR. Just to give you all a brief background of who we are and what we do, Bundle AR is a augmented reality company based out of Chicago, and we've recently created a web-based drag and drop AR platform that enables all of our users to design, publish, and access augmented reality experiences without having to write a single line of code. And when I say we, I'm obviously referring to our incredible developers team that built the platform. So people like me who have no coding experience can now design and publish their own custom AR, which is awesome. And Matt, we do have a quick video here if you'd like to play that, just so you can all get a little more background on who we are and what we do.
And I'll warn you guys now, I don't have control of the volume of this, but it will play the video shortly.
Until now, creating augmented reality was hard. IT departments simply do not have the expertise, so they rely on expensive developers and one-off solutions. Introducing Bundle AR's augmented reality platform. Bundle AR's revolutionary self-serve augmented reality content management system allows anyone, anywhere, to easily create, edit, and deploy augmented reality to Apple and Google devices instantly and on a global scale. Now is the time to add on-demand, accurate, and trusted digital information to your communications through a tool nearly everybody already has, their smartphone. Perfect for just-in-time immersive training, learning, and development programs. Easily place multimedia content like videos or interactive 3D models on real-world items like signage, brochures, or packaging to enhance your audience's understanding of your product, procedures, or story. No special equipment or coding skills necessary. It's augmented reality made easy. Visit bundlear.com now to get started.
All right, thank you for that, Matt. So as you can see, the applications for AR are really only truly limited by your imagination. So if any of you guys would like to know more about Bundle AR in general or have any questions, I'll be sticking around until the end of the event. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you, Anthony. Full disclosure, everyone, just so in case you're not aware, I am also the president and CTO of Bundle AR, for those of you who are not aware of that. Another sponsor that I would like to speak to really quickly, I know we couldn't have a representative, so I don't think we have a representative from 1871 tonight. Let me take a look. No, we do not. So 1871 is Chicago's technology incubator. As I mentioned at the start, we've been doing this event for over 4.5 years, and pretty much for the first 6 months or so, the event kind of moved around to different locations. The very first one was in fact held at 1871. And about 6 to 8 months in, we then started hosting it regularly at 1871. 1871 is the recognized as actually the world's #1 technology incubator. They are the largest. I think the numbers that I heard this morning, because I was speaking with the CEO, was there's over 850 companies that are considered alumni of 1871. They have raised collectively in the range of $3 billion. They have contributed something in the range of 12, I can't remember if it was 12 or 22, I apologize if I'm getting the stats wrong, but 12 or $22 billion to the economy, created over 12,000 jobs. So these are all the companies that have started out of 1871. I want to say there's approximately 400 companies that are currently based out of 1871, including actually Bundle AR started out of 1871. It's an 1871 company. BR Chicago is very closely associated with 1871. And they are actually now expanding beyond their physical footprint in the Merchandise Mart in Chicago, and they have their own private campus. They offer mentorship. They offer pretty much any, if you're a startup or if you're a growing company, you really should check out the community because they probably have programming for you, experts that you can tap into. It's a great community. I highly encourage reaching out to them. And I don't see Cam in the room, so I will very quickly welcome or introduce Verbella, which I would hope everybody in the room here is familiar with, and those of you watching on Facebook Live. Verbella is the space that we're actually in, and they have been our home for the last year and a half or so since we had to transition to a completely virtual environment. Verbella pretty much asked us about 2 months into the virtual transmission to please consider hosting one in their space. They liked us so much that they chose to sponsor us, and we like them so much that we have been hosting them in here, hosting these events on a monthly basis in here since. We do obviously hope that at some point we will get back to physical events, and I should say when we do get back to physical, we will be doing them hybrid, so there will always be some virtual component from this point forward. But you know, VRAR Chicago as a company has actually had our office space in Verbella for over a year at this point. Because again, for the last year, no one's had to have a physical office. Everyone's been working virtual, so we work out of Verbella. We actually have an office suite here in the Verbella campus, in addition to doing the event here. I would also like to mention our partners who help promote the event, help us get speakers, help us connect, and just keep in touch with our community. Those being XR Women, 2112, Chicago's Creative Center for Entrepreneurship, the IGDA, the Independent Game Developers Association, and VR Motion Learning. And with that, let's talk a little bit about the event that we are going to have this evening, the format, how it's all going to work. We are here tonight to talk about research, and research is a very interesting topic when it comes to immersive technology because ultimately there is the research about how immersive technology is changing things, as well as the research that you can conduct in immersive technology that is very hard to conduct sometimes in the physical world. We have a panel of experts from several companies. You'll meet them. I'm not going to bother doing them the disservice of introducing them. I will let them introduce themselves in just a few moments. But how the event's going to work. The speakers here, this event is for you. It is for our audience. It is not for our speakers to come here and pitch products. So what's going to happen is our speakers are going to give a very brief presentation about who they are, what they do, a little bit about their companies and some of the experiences that they've had with their companies, and some of the solutions perhaps that their companies have provided. And then after that short presentation, we're going to open this up to questions and answers. And that's really kind of the meat of the event. The purpose of this event is for those of you in our audience to be able to take whatever your next step forward is with immersive technology. Those of you watching on Facebook Live as well, we want you to interact with us live. If you have a question that you need answered, this is your chance to ask it. We're a very open community. We're very friendly. There's no formal, nothing formal happening here. Please, again, the statement that we will repeat as always is the only stupid question is the one that you don't ask. So the way that the Q&A will work at the end is we will, use raised hands and unmuting. We'll tell people to, call on people to unmute microphones. We will ask that everybody in the audience please remain muted until we get to the Q&A session, because if we see open microphones, we will mute you, and if we, can't mute you, we will probably kick you out of the room, just because we do want to make sure that the people who are presenting get the courtesy of having the ability to present their stuff. With that, I will, frankly, stop talking and get out of the way and leave it to our panel of experts, starting with Tony Bevilacqua, the founder and CEO of Cognitive 3D. Tony, would you come and join me here at the center? And for those of you watching on Facebook, I will be transitioning so that you'll be able to see the slides in the picture-in-picture in just a moment. But I do want to see that Tony's up here next to me. Come on a little bit closer to me, Tony, because if you're over on the side, you might actually get covered by the slides. All right, and that looks good. That looks great. I'm going to transition to the picture-in-picture right now, and I'm going to stop and get out of your way. Let me know again when you want slide changes, so let me know. Thank you.
Sounds good. If we could get my first slide, that'd be great. Perfect. All right, so go ahead and get started. My name is Tony Bevilacqua. I'm the founder and CEO of Cognitive 3D. We're a Vancouver-based company focused on spatial analytics. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the evolution of metrics today, as well as human performance and a few other topics. Could we do next slide, please? So cognitive 3D focuses primarily on collecting spatial data. It's one of the unique capabilities of this next generation of technology. If you think about the capabilities that are offered by this technology, we have a deeper level of human interaction. Users have greater presence within immersive simulation. It also means there's greater capability to measure and understand human performance outcomes within immersive simulation. Next slide, please. So I usually like to kind of set these conversations up with talking a little bit about the evolution of metrics, right? If we think about, kind of how things have evolved over the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, from mobile to web and then into VR and AR, when you think about web, it's much more of a passive experience. You're measuring things like clicks and understanding page views and bounce rate and how long somebody spent on a page. Very surface level metrics and insights that you can garner from these types of environments. When mobile came around, it became a lot more about daily active users and monthly active users, retention rates, conversion rates, monetization, those types of things. But there was also an introduction of new sensors and new capabilities. You had touches and taps and cameras and gyroscopes and GPS and other types of things that kind of introduced and laid the foundation for kind of the next generation of metrics for that platform. But it's nothing like what we've seen in VR, AR, and even 3D-based simulation, where you have the capability to understand things like eye focus, right? So using eye tracking or even gaze, head movement and how people behave and move through an environment. I see some of you moving your heads right now inside for Bella. The 3D positioning of how somebody navigates and traverses a 3D environment, hand movements, and even biometrics if you have the additional sensors and capabilities within that environment. The real difference here is that users have presence and agency within these types of environments, and there's a deeper level of metric and ability to garner human performance and engagement within those environments as well. So I wanted to walk you through just a couple examples of that. Next slide, please. So the first one on the left here is an example of eye tracking data within a 3D environment. And I think it's important to kind of mention that when you take up somebody's field of view, when you have that ability to put somebody within an immersive space, you really have full control over the environment and what they see. When you tie that with eye tracking, you have a real ability to understand human behavior in a research context around what people are seeing, what they're comprehending. And in a research context, that might be understanding, the effectiveness of a planogram through the design of a particular vehicle. This data can be used and harnessed in different ways to answer research outcomes within controlled environments. Another example on the right would be something like path data and understanding how people traverse space. Everybody that joined Verbella today navigated from one world, which was the lobby, into this particular world. You may have navigated around it. But there's a lot of data that can be learned about how people interact from a positional perspective and perhaps different actions that might be taken by that user as they navigate through space. Next slide, please. But we want to make sure that we collect the right data. We need to collect the data that's actually important, that's going to have reveal the context that we're looking for. And this is an example of, perhaps an environment that doesn't necessarily give us that. So let's talk about some of our use cases. Next slide, please. So one of the use case I want to talk today about is product design and iteration, right? So if we think about, large product design, that could be from AEC or architectural engineering construction through to product design, such as vehicle manufacturing and the design process that is entirely wrapped around that. As well as the iteration that goes beyond that with engineers. If you think about the opportunities to measure in these types of environments, a lot of vehicle manufacturers spent a lot of time building clay models, doing kind of magic wall type of environments, looking at renders on paper or on poster boards, and not really had the deep level of engagement that they could potentially have and the iteration opportunity they could have in an automotive environment through 3D and immersive visualization. If you think about the capability of putting somebody like in a Vario VR3, which is an incredibly high-end device, you have that opportunity to really understand how the user is going to engage within a particular 3D space that might not even exist and might not even be a prototype within your organization. So let's go to the next slide, and I'm going to show you just a quick video, if we can, of what that might look in practice. The interesting thing about technology is that it can be done on a distributed basis. When you think about consumer labs and clinics and other types of activities that vehicle manufacturers do, it often involves bringing in a cohort of people, sitting them down, giving them a sandwich, and then walking them through a variety of different stimuli. With a 3D based environment, you have the potential opportunity to distribute remotely and at scale, right? And this is an example of a user inside of a 3D environment navigating through that environment and capturing eye tracking and other types of immersive outcomes from that particular 3D space. So this could give you insight around dashboard clusters and positioning of items, the user's cognitive load perhaps, or engagement within a particular environment. All right, go to the next slide, please. Next use case I wanted to talk to you about is really around retail and CPG-based research, right? So in the retail environment, understanding how the flow of a grocery store or a retail location might work, all the way through to the individual products and items that are located on the shelves. There's a lot of capability within 3D environments and within a 3D context to be able to understand and subscribe that eye tracking data on a very detailed way to the actual objects and items that might be located within that particular environment. Next slide, please. And what that gives us is a capability for granularity, the ability to surface insights and understand what is the sequence of engagement, what was the time to fixation on a particular object, and what are the potential facings as well as elements of packaging that might actually draw the user's attention towards a particular planogram as well as a particular item within the shelf. By using immersive technology for this particular problem, you have the opportunity to ask a lot of questions about human behavior and how different types of elements of products and their traits, such as categorization, could be like in our case, we're doing Pop-Tarts here, might be different flavors of Pop-Tarts, frosted versus unfrosted, price point versus the generic brand. There's lots of different ways that you can take that data, slice it and dice it within a 3D based environment. Next slide, please. It also gives us the ability to really understand those granular insights, right? Being able to disassemble that 3D environment and understand what was the engagement kind of across all the different items that were within the user's field of view. In this case, we're talking about Pop-Tarts, but also being able to understand every facing and how that was engaged with across a broad audience of users. Slide, please. This gives us the ability to create what we call a insight feedback loop, right? So if we think about it, from the top of the view here, you've got your research stakeholders, you've got an asset pipeline of assets that you're creating within your organization. You put that into a 3D engine. Perhaps you put subjects into a headset like the Vario, traffic that with users from somebody like Expert VR, and you suddenly have a flywheel that you can use to be able to test and understand the insights from somebody like Cognitive 3D to be able to create that insight feedback loop within your organization. So that's typically what we strive to achieve with our customers is how do we create a iteration life cycle within the research where they can actually test a lot of different scenarios and leverage VR as a vehicle for data collection across whatever use cases that they might be working on. So next slide, please. My name is Tony Bevilacqua, as CEO of Cognitive 3D. If you're interested in anything I talked about with regards to insights, the insight feedback loop, or any of the use cases discussed today, including what I didn't discuss, such as the training use case, feel free to drop me an email. My email's on screen, or cognitive3d.com. Thank you.
And thank you, Tony. All right, up next, I have Evan. And Evan, if you don't mind, come and join me here. Evan's over on this side, apparently. There he is.
Yeah,
I
I'm
will let
sorry,
you introduce
Verbella.
yourself, and I'll get out of the way. Thank you.
Perfect. And sorry, Verbella just crashed from me, and I'm back. So hopefully it doesn't crash as we're talking here. But yeah,
all right.
Happy to be here. And yeah, as Matthew mentioned, my name is Evan Sittler, co-founder and CEO of Expert VR. So really excited to quickly just go over some of the work that we've done at Expert VR and touching on a lot of the things that Tony just talked about there and how we're using that with our clients. So go to the next slide, please. Oh, perfect. So a quick about me. So done lots of things over the past 5 years in virtual reality, but really a lifelong entrepreneur and a Brock University business graduate, as well as a couple incubator alumni, and really excited to hear about 1812 and see how we might be able to get involved there. Also out of Verbella, one of the directors of the iLearn Canadian chapter for the Immersive Learning Research Network. So working there to work with academics from across Canada to look into new ways to run research as well as e-learning. And then just a fun fact, a couple outside of virtual reality in the work sense, I also love to play virtual reality. So just a month ago, I won a Population 1 tournament in virtual reality. So always happy to talk about the work side, but also the gaming side. And of course, being from Expert VR, I am a VR expert, I like to say. Next slide, please. Yeah, so who is Expert VR? Well, really we strive to enable meaningful interactions regardless of physical distance. Our mission over the next 5 years is to help 1 million people learn from actions, not statements. We're doing this with academic institutions across Canada and now starting to go into North America, as well as some private enterprises running research and doing e-learning and training. And so now I'd love to go into a couple examples of how we're doing this so that during the panel you can ask some questions and understand where I'm coming from, so you can ask questions that I might be able to answer. So go to the next slide, please. So I just got a couple of videos here to show some examples of the research and e-learning we've done. So this video, I don't know if it's playing for you. It looks like it's paused on my little screen here, but basically here we created 2 ocean environments, and the paper for this was just published from Brock University. And here a researcher was looking at how they could create empathy in a virtual reality world. So we created a dystopian future of what ocean life may look like in 2050 and a utopian future, and had people, half of the participants just read about this and watch a video, and the other half go through the virtual experiences and see how their empathy changed. So it's really interesting to see that empathy increased when they're in virtual reality, but also the willingness to participate and be part of this research and learn about what was going on also increased. The researchers we were working with, they found that in a normal research study, it was hard to get around 100 participants to come, even when they were paying people to come and do the research. Whereas when we were doing the research, we set up a VR headset in this main area of Brock University, and we were able to get over 300 people in 2 days to go through the virtual reality experience and go through the research. And that really helped them solidify their research data. As well, it was just great to see, because now from here they're looking to take this research to the United Nations and show off what this empathy that can be created through virtual reality, and get new policies put into place around climate change. Next slide, please. Are the slides loading for everyone?
Yep.
I can't seem to see them. It's gone to a green screen for some reason. Could you please just remind me which video this one is? I can't remember which order I put them into.
Checkered floor.
Checkered floor, perfect, thank you. So this one's just to obviously we're talking about research here, but this one's just to show some of the other academic sides that we're doing, and also applies to research and how we're looking at the e-learning side and how to research that environment. So here, this is a crime scene that we designed where students now at Conestoga College are going through and learning how to investigate a crime scene in a virtual world. And so every time you go in here, a scenario is changed. And similar to what Tony's talking about, we track a lot of data as students go through these environments, so you can better understand how fast the students learning, if they're confident coming out of these environments, if they checked all of the right areas, did the right process that they should be doing when investigating a crime scene. And you can get them to go through that again and again, and each scenario can be a little bit different or completely different, so that you're really testing their skills and making sure that they are ready for the real world. Next slide, please.
So it's like a wine cellar.
Perfect. So then again, like Tony was mentioning here, there's a huge opportunity for consumer behavior research, both in the enterprise space, but we've seen a lot of academics really interested in this space as well, so that students can work with retail partners and brands to learn skills if they're in like the marketing space, or just for researchers to publish new papers about the retail space. So here we created an LCBO, which is here in Ontario, is the regional liquor store. And in this environment, people can go through and virtually shop like they normally would, or we also had an environment where they could ask questions about the wine. So being able to change the labels here, change shelving placement, and with the data that's collected with Cognitive 3D, being able to track eyes, the path people take through the store, sometimes heart rate, different things along those lines, you're able to understand why people made the purchasing decisions that they did, and being able to then design the real world stores to better help people find what they're looking for. Next slide, please. And is this just the end slide?
This is like a Q&A slide, but we can get to that when we get to the actual Q&A.
Perfect, exactly. All right, so yeah, if anybody would like to connect on LinkedIn afterwards, always happy to help answer questions and network afterwards, but excited for the panel here and looking forward to hearing your questions.
And thank you very much, Evan. I'm going to say I'm going to have a lot of questions for you related to population one, since I've been there all day. I've played that game as well. But before we get to that, that'll happen during the networking session. I'm not even going to bother you during the Q&A for that. I will bring up Jeffrey Bund from Vario, and I'm not going to try to roll my tongue on that one right now. But Jeffrey, there we go. You're next to me. I'm going to mute myself and walk away. Thank you very much.
Hello. Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me out here. And I haven't seen Tony or Evan in an uncharacteristically long time. I've been on vacation for a bit, but it's great to see you guys on this virtual stage. Yeah, and out here on this panel. I'll talk a tiny bit about what I do and what Vario does, but then what I've mostly prepared are just some light slides on a couple key use cases that we've seen in universities and academia doing research projects with Vario. So I'm head of software partnerships for Vario, and so what that means is I go seek out companies like Cognitive 3D, who I think we ought to be working with, get them working with our hardware, and then get the first use cases done and over the line with them. It's been a really cool job and good adventure so far. I'm also Vario's first U.S. employee, so I've been at the company 3.5 out of its 5 years. And through now 3 or 4 products. So that's been really exciting. And for those of you who don't know, what Vario does is we build virtual reality and mixed reality headsets. And the niche in the market that we occupy is at the very high end. So all of our headsets feature human eye resolution. We have very accurate and high refresh rate integrated eye tracking. And then the thing that we launched about a year and a half ago now is we have a product called the XR3, which features video see-through mixed reality. So it passes through the environment around you through a camera stack. And common feedback that we get on it is that we really are starting to blur the line between aesthetic and real content, and it's allowing our users to be really interesting. Like, could you advance a slide? One of our early adopters was the University of Western Ontario, and a researcher by the name of Jody Cullum, as he has a vision research lab that's doing some really interesting. So next slide. And this is just one example of many, many things that they do, but what they can do with our mixed reality headset is they can isolate certain visual cues and start understanding more how we world around us. So what that means is that, you know, in this slide, they can things like synthetically generate a soccer ball or a ball that looks like a soccer ball but is in fact much smaller, and put it at different distances synthetically, or blow it up. And they can do things like, and what that does is basically allow them to isolate whether we're using things like binocular cues or parallax or contextual cues of the content of an object to decide what size it is or how far away it is. And the next two slides have like just a good real world illustration of what they're doing. So this is all from her. I can't take credit for this. I wanted to make sure that she's there. But yeah, can you advance the next slide? Yeah, and so our headsets, because they do a really good job of portraying the world around you really sharply, but then we can also display synthetic content in similar resolution. It allows researchers Jody to make some really powerful observation about perception. So as someone who I used to work on 3D a lot, I love what she's doing in the lab. And yeah, and you can definitely reach out to them as well if you have questions about what they're doing in research, or I could connect you to them. And then next slide, please. We also had a really interesting example that came up lately, and there was a webinar on this that's available for download on the Vario website. But we have a customer at Loma Linda University doing really interesting research on first responder training. And so what they have there is, after September 11th, they were given a budget and a mandate to train all of their medical students on first response training, and they set up a simulation lab. And they used us for their first foray into reality, and then did a really interesting experiment. So next slide. So they did a mass casualty triage event that involved about 20 mannequins. Next slide. And they put a cohort of students through this experience. So they're in this room, a bus crashes, and because of the chroma key mixed reality features, it feels like they're there and they're in the environment. And then next slide, please. They're able to control all the mannequins through the software that is supplied by Layerdal and Gumar for the mannequins, but then interact with the world and triage the scene as though it's real life. And they did some other funny things here, like they piped in pine smell because the experience took place in a forest, and they thought that would be an interesting way of like routing more of a direct sense path to memory. And then next slide. You look, they did an analysis on retention based on virtual reality and mixed reality. They did find an improvement, although a bit of a subtle one. But I really like this because it's an example of a group of people really using the technology and pushing it. And they were really satisfied with the experience. They would be building more experiences like this and pushing it a little bit further. So I'm really eager to see what they come up with. And slide please. One of the other groups that we worked with that's doing some really interesting work in mixed reality is Virginia Tech. We worked with a UI UX lab there under Doug Bowman, and one of his students named Corey Elo built a really interesting tool. And what they were trying to do is ascertain whether mixed reality could be used as a surgical magnification loop, i.e. if you could use something like a video see-through device to replace like loops, which are magnifying lenses that surgeons use, or if you're not familiar, you can think of something that like a jeweler would use. So next slide. And they built a really interesting simulation for suturing. And then the thing that Corey did that I think is the most interesting is our eye tracker in conjunction with our mixed reality camera stack to create a hands-free magnification input. And so he made several different kinds, but the one that he eventually went with is that if you close your right eye, leave your left eye open, the tool will zoom in. And if you close your left eye and leave your right eye open, it will zoom out, and it allows the user to seamlessly move back and forth between different magnification powers. Next slide. Yeah, and you can see here a bit of an illustration of what they did. Then next slide. Oh, is that all I had? Oh my. Well, then they compared both of their zooming methods and methods of magnification against the efficacy of doing the sutures, and they made some conclusions about it. But then the other thing they concluded after this experiment is that the mixed reality, camera-based mixed reality outperformed their expectations. They're going to be, pushing it even further, getting our new products when they come out and building them into this experimental cycle, and hopefully equipping ultimately in the next, 5 years surgeons with digital tools for magnification during surgery, instead of just analog magnification. And yeah, those are the use cases I prepared. I'm a little intimidated by Tony and Evan. They're way more technical than I am, but I've had the pleasure of being, pretty broadly exposed of the VR and MR industry the past few years. So I can hopefully answer some questions if people have it about a variety of different things.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeffrey. So at this point, we're getting into the Q&A portion of the event. And so what I'll actually do is, rather than you walking away, I'm going to have everybody, if you don't mind, come and join me, and sort of kind of spread yourselves out around, standing, to either side of me. Tony and Evan and Jeff. There we go. I'm going to take the slides away. So sorry, I didn't mean to say everyone. I did mean to say everyone on the panelists. So apologies for that. But I'm going to have the panelists join me here, and we're going to get to the Q&A portion. So how the Q&A portion will work, give me a second again as I change the slides to take away the slide deck for those of you who are watching in live stream. The way the Q&A portion works is at the bottom of your screen, and actually we'll do this really quickly. For those of you who've been to this event before, there's a button at the bottom center of your screen in Rubella. Please raise your hand if you've been here before to prior VR Air Chicago events. Excellent, thank you very much. Please put your hand down. And for those of you who have never been here before, please raise your hand. Excellent. And that is the way that we will do the raising of the hands for Q&A. The one thing I do want to point out is that I see your hands in the order that they went up. So if if you have something that you want to ask, I would suggest please raise your hand and then keep it raised, because I will call people in the order of things that, again, in the order of the hands that came up. It looks like we already have some hands raised, so we can get to our first question. What we will do is I will call your name. At that point, please unmute yourself and ask your question. As soon as you are done asking your question, please re-mute yourself, and then we'll give the panelists a chance to answer. If you do have a specific question for a specific panelist, please make sure you direct it to that panelist. If you're just kind of asking across the line, feel free to do that. But I will say, again, please mute yourself as soon as you are done asking your question. And, we do kind of try to limit a little bit of the back and forth conversation just because we want to make sure that everyone can get their questions answered if they have one. But with that, Melissa seems to have beaten everybody to getting her hand up. So Melissa, you want to try and unmute yourself?
Sorry if I have my hand still raised, it's unintentional.
Oh, that's okay. You can mute yourself then, and I'll go to the next one. You can just press the raise hand button at the bottom, and that will unraise your hand as well if it's currently raised. And it looks like Emily, your hand is up. Are you waiting to ask a question? Okay.
My apologies. I need to put my hand down.
Okay. Well, with that said, then I will open it up to see who is actually going to be the brave person that asks the first question. And it looks like Sight has that honor. Go ahead, Sight, and unmute yourself.
Okay.
We can hear
my question. Yes, you can hear me. Good. My question is for Jeffrey with Vario. Jeffrey, your title is Software Partnership USA. Can you say more about your partnership programs in the USA and who's eligible to apply? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So we're still kind of a bit of a startup, so we don't have a super formal program. There's a portal where you can apply on our website, but it basically sends an email to me about it, and we evaluate them on a case-by-case basis. My typical rule of thumb for the U.S. other members of the U.S. team when they ask me if they should refer someone is that if your product is software, that is the first thing. So if you make something like a car or a desk, then you're probably not eligible to be a software partner. But if the main source of revenue of the company is software that you sell, that's a good indication. And then what I tend to look for typically are people who are catering to, again, like what ends up being Vario customers. So people who have a need for high-end, high-performance headsets. Like they do something that requires high resolution, high-performance eye tracking, or very good mixed reality. I hope that answered it.
Well, just a quick follow-up. Your Virginia Tech example of gaze-based interfaces. So that was they developed the software to work with your hardware. Is that right?
Yeah, and being the first U.S. employee, I've done many things at Vario, so not everything that I talked about would be software partnerships program or anything else. But yeah, in this case, Virginia Tech used our Unity plugin to build thick input-based commands for the XR headset and the render pipeline.
Excellent. All right, so let's see who is going to ask the next question. Again, just raise your hand and I will call on you. If there are questions up on Facebook, feel free to just type them into the chat. And we do have one from Facebook from Francis. I have a little out-of-the-box question for the presenters if time is allowed. Is there a possibility for using VR, AR, MR to train people or prepare adaptation for deep sea exploration, space exploration, Mars colonization? I would imagine this is basically just referring to a whole lot of things that would generally be considered either confining or dangerous environments. And how would we, I guess, how do you think companies would approach trying to train people for environments that frankly it's, you don't really know what the situation is going to be like in those environments. So it's, to virtualize it for training, what would you do or how would that be approached? So that is, I'll definitely say, Francis, yes, that is definitely a little bit of an out of the box question, but I'll give the presenters a shot at answering it. See who wants to go first.
I'll give it a shot. Creating synthetic environments, you do need some predictability about what's going to be ultimately presented within that environment. But I think you kind of hit the name of the game for some of the primary use cases and why you'd want to use a virtualized environment. Dangerous, difficult to replicate, impossible to replicate, highly dangerous to an individual, high potential loss of equipment or potential costs to an organization to deliver that training. There's a lot of use cases that virtual reality is dialed right in terms of the type of use cases it can best facilitate. But also kind of relative to what we're talking about here today, which is around the research side of things. These immersive experiences can also be a fantastic gateway to understanding kind of the human element within those particular environments, right? It gives us that opportunity to think about what are the things that the end user is reacting to, what can we learn about from the eye tracking, and what are the things that are being paid attention to, the biometric response of the end user that could relate to things like heart rate, or I think I mentioned earlier things like cognitive load, or even galvanic skin response. So synthetic environments, you definitely need to there needs to be some predictability, and obviously they need to be authored, but you also have kind of the ultimate canvas to create some simulations that would be relatively impossible to replicate here on Earth.
Yeah, I completely agree with Tony, and I guess the only thing I want to add, and Jeff can talk about it more, but I know that Barrio has been working training astronauts to go into space and go to the International Space Station. So I think like those types of applications are definitely what virtual reality is being used for already, and there's so many Shatner, so many amazing opportunities for it, but definitely in the dangerous and hard to replicate space is where virtual reality shines.
Yeah, I should make a quick plug for our Boeing Starliner material that's out there off our website. Boeing Starliner team's been using our headset with an Unreal Engine based simulator to train on. I guess you would call it a part task trainer. So they've been using it train on like the ISS docking procedure, among other things. So and we have a ton of really nice material about that on our website.
Excellent. Reza, you want to try unmuting yourself?
Yep. Hey, how's it
Go
going?
ahead.
I guess this question would be about spatial analytics. I'm just kind of curious if you've noticed when you're doing research. The example I was thinking was when people are looking at shopping aisles and you're kind of analyzing where they're looking. Do you notice that people sometimes don't act very naturally in a headset, or someone that's not very familiar with the VR headset, if they act differently, and do you kind of account for that sometimes when you're taking that data?
This is Tony. So when we do research environments like that, we typically try to orient and onboard the users separately from the stimuli. We've got a prefab in our SDK, which is called the Ready Room. And effectively what the Ready Room is for is taking a new user that's never been in VR before and give them an opportunity to play in the environment and kind of get acquainted and get through the shock and awe of being within a simulated store. So we give them an opportunity to try the mechanics of picking up and dropping items, and learning how to use their hand controllers, all those types of things. And then once that's complete, then we put them into the original environment. The reason I mention it is because, in the early days, yeah, we would drop them right into a research environment in an aisle, and they would knock half the products off the shelf and, start throwing Pop-Tarts at people. So, I think that, once they have that opportunity to kind of get their sillies out, it gives them an opportunity to provide, more relevant metrics in the actual, the actual stimuli.
Cool. Thanks.
I see Greg Schofield. Oh, sorry.
I would add really quickly to that it's one of the benefits of reality found is that when people can see the room around them and people around them, they're way more comfortable. Yeah, that's just one thing I've noticed.
Yeah.
Excellent. Greg, you want to try unmuting yourself?
Yeah, good evening. Primarily a question for Tony, but I'd also be interested to hear if Evan has any thoughts on. Curious if you've brought in any professionals. Say as a sidebar that my college is working with Evan developing a CSI program right now. And the one thing I was curious about was if you'd had any experience bringing in professionals who are well versed in whatever the training is or the experience to run through the simulation to act as a benchmark and how effective that was. Because again, coming back to what Evan's developing for us, I'm interested in the idea of bringing in actual forensic officers to run through the scenario to be able to compare to the student performance. So just wondering if that is a valid approach.
Definitely is a valid approach and something that we've already done with customers a few different times. An example would be we worked with a major utility in the southern US, and they put together a number of different training scenarios. But what they did was bring in their most senior people and build a number of benchmarks against what their expectations should be across the new employees, trainees, or transferees from other organizations that may have a inconsistent level of knowledge with a particular training scenario. So I think your idea around bringing in forensic officers to test the efficacy of the training as well as the performance that you would expect from a seasoned officer is a good overall baseline for being able to understand what you should expect from a student. I'd also like to mention that it might also make sense to I'm going to pause there. That's my answer.
Yeah, I completely agree with Tony there. It's we always say that we're the experts at virtual reality, not the experts in all the industries that we work with. So every project we do for clients, when it's a custom project, that's definitely the cornerstone of every project. We sit down and we understand with the experts what needs to be done, as well as our team goes and looks at all of the related content like textbooks and slides that are out there and videos so that we can learn what we need to do. So definitely a cornerstone there. But then I completely agree having people go through and taking those measurements, and that's definitely now we're starting to move towards building out products, and something that we want to have is, as you know, Greg, from our conversations, building out that panel for each simulation is very important to have the experts that can go through and set those benchmarks.
Okay,
One thing I did want to add, Greg, is that one of the observations that we've had on a couple of these, kind of remote deployments is that there seems to be a disconnect between written policy, the actual, training steps, and what seasoned end users do in the field or seasoned employees do in the field. And I think it's actually a really unique learning opportunity to kind of see where your organization is at as well against the standard policy of the organization, which I think is an interesting learning area as well.
So I got a DM with a question, so it's not in the public chat, it's in the private chat, but it's a good question specifically because you guys do work together, but there seems to be a definite kind of flow of information. So if you're working with Vario, and for the other panelists, Tony and Evan, if you're working with Vario, how does kind of like the workflow go between how much of it is on the software side, how much of it's on the hardware side in terms of being able to develop for the environment? Can you guys just sort of explain the relationship and how it works, or in your experience, if nothing else?
Do you want me to take that, Jeff?
Yeah, I wish you would.
Cool. Vario has a SDK, software development kit, has a eye tracking API within it that gives you access to basically everything you need to surface that eye tracking in any Unity or Unreal application. So if you want to roll your own and create some sort of insight or use for the eye tracking, within your application, you certainly have the facilities and capability to do so. And by buying a Vario device and using that SDK, you have that capability to do so. Why Cognitive 3D exists is we focus on the analytics side. That means that we use the Vario itself and those APIs and that SDK as a vehicle for data collection. So where we come in is our SDK goes into your app and we consume all that data off the Vario headset and provide dashboards and tools for you to kind of consume that data, which is kind of, can be the daunting element of, how do we show spatial context? How do we boil down raw eye tracking data to fixations and metrics? There's pieces and elements that Cognitive 3D provides on a turnkey basis. So that's kind of the connection between having the raw SDK and being able to just simply use it however you'd like. And some of the use cases that Jeff mentioned, the universities went ahead and did that. But we also have, Vario academic customers that have decided to use Cognitive 3D and focus on doing the research as opposed to building tooling.
Yeah, I really should plug Cognitive 3D at this point. I mean, they deliver a really platform that we've taken into use our sales and BD. For easy to add their code to anything Unity based, and we can have access to it anywhere, and we really visually stunning demos of what the eye tracking can do. So we can have it available anywhere, and Tony and his team do a really great job of supporting our customers and going.
I would just add as well on the Vario side, they're very supportive as well. That yes, like Tony mentioned, you have that SDK that you can build off of, and then there's the tools like Cognitive 3D that you can use on top of there and just using in Unity. But as well, if you have something that's a new idea or something innovative that you need to do something more than what is offered today through Unity and Vario and Cognitive 3D, they're really open to hearing those ideas. And I believe like a great example of that was the chroma key example that Jeff gave earlier, and seeing how that was actually a customer idea, and then their developers looked into that and saw how beneficial it could be for more customers and developed it and released it to everyone. So being able to approach them with those ideas and get that help and then have it available to everyone is an amazing asset.
All right, next question is from Facebook, and it's specifically related to the crime scene training and the trauma training for the mass casualty event. Do you think it would be more helpful and potentially useful to train people based on actual disasters or actual accidents to kind of do a little bit of a recreation of, and again, maybe this was done, but I'm not sure, but to do a recreation of an actual event as opposed to a hypothetical event, just to sort of kind of try to, I guess, learn from the errors or potentially game it out to see if things could have been done better. I don't know if you guys have an opinion on that, but I'll open that one up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I think disaster response would know, but just by way of giving an answer, there's an interesting set of companies that we've been starting to get introduced to that are forensic engineering. Their job is to read synthetic environments for the sake of courtroom reproduction. So like to check and see whether things like hazard communication was correctly marked, like if someone fell down the stairway, and they can show to the jury or judge in a case stairway actually looked like. So that's like an interesting industry that's starting to take up VR and mixed reality. That's sort of like adjacent and heavily focused on like hyper realism and accuracy.
Tony or Evan, do you want to add to that, or I'm going to just keep moving?
Yeah, I would just add that it's definitely a really interesting idea, and I think there's good merits there for how it could be used. But the one caveat I would say is that we found in training, you want to have multiple scenarios so that when a student's going in and going through something multiple times, trying to learn a new skill, they're not just kind of learning the best path in that one environment or scenario. So we try to have like 7 or 8 or more scenarios so that each time they're going in, they have to learn new things, or even sometimes having the evidence objects or different things they have to do randomized each time. And that way they're actually learning the skills and how it could be, how those skills could be used in different scenarios instead of just in that one environment. So I think it's a great idea for like a well-known event that has happened, and something that's good to analyze and do kind of like a case study analysis, but in a virtual world on. But for full training, when you're going through multiple times, I think it's better to have all those scenarios.
All right. Well, looks like Sight has another question, so I'll let you go, Sight. Go ahead.
All right. And this is for all 4 of you. I want to broach the idea of experiential design for you guys as a commercial opportunity. One of you mentioned, well, you're the specialist in the tech, but not in what the company's industries are that they do with the tech. But I would expect that you're all interested in those companies wanting to use your tech. An example, Jeffrey's showing the mannequins. Each one of the, I've seen other VR webinars about the mannequin training with headsets. But what struck me so much was hybrid technology. The mannequins are wired up to standalone laptops. You can change their vital signs based on what the trainee is doing wrong or doing right. You mentioned spraying pine in the air. What if you sprayed the smell of blood in the air? You also used a massive green sheet, so that wherever they looked, they were surrounded by bloody, terrible. I have to tell you guys, when I was a Boy Scout, we participated in a training at Lakefront Airport in Cleveland, Ohio, and we were the victims. And they used Vaseline and tissue paper and red dye to make us look like we were grievously wounded. It was the coolest thing to a 12-year-old, of course. First responders were rushing over to us and loading us in trucks. It was an experiential design that had more impact on their learning what to do and what not to do than they could ever pick up in a classroom. And I think we all agree that research shows VR headsets certainly enhance that experience. But I'm here to say that 2D flat screens do the same thing. I've seen a scuba diving certification, advanced air training done in a flat screen 2D world where you wear a wristwatch, you calculate how I did scuba training when I was in university as well.
Sorry, can you get to
So
the question,
my
please?
point is, and I do have one, have you thought about going beyond the coolness of a VR headset and making an experiential design for marketing beyond what is in the headlines? Thanks. And if you have, what have you thought? What are your thoughts?
Who wants to go first on that one?
Yeah, so from our perspective at Cognitive 3D, I think Sight, you got it right. I mean, we take a step back from what our customers or end customers actually end up using the tools for, especially with even our academic research. I have to say we've got 20 plus academic research contracts ongoing right now, and they're all doing something different and applying use cases in different ways. What we're trying to do is surface the tools and the capabilities that our customers can leverage to be able to facilitate some of what you're talking about. And if we think about kind of the roadmap moving forward, today obviously we talked a lot about research. ultimately cognitive 3D, half of our business is in training simulation, and where we spend a lot of our time as well. In those use cases, we're trying to understand human performance, compliance, completion. If you think about what is required to create the feedback loop in something like machine learning, you need to know and understand, how well a user is doing, and if they're following, they're getting their way through the funnel. You can eventually use that data to create a model and understand what are the implications of what is a user doing and how are they behaving in a particular space and how that may influence a particular end outcome. So I think that these training applications are going to get a lot smarter as we kind of move forward. And I think that spatial data is going to be an important aspect of that.
Evan or Jeff?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would add, I completely agree that the spatial data is amazing, and I think that adding things like the mannequins or all kinds of extra accessories can really enhance the experience. The problem that we've seen just with so many training applications is that you're trying to get it out, especially with a school, to 400 students at a time, and to have those extra accessories. I think the spatial data can be applied in that sense, but a lot of the extra accessories can be a lot harder to get out to that many people. And with that, even looking at some of our simulations, we build it for PC so that people can go on, like you're saying, in a 2D sense. So that's kind of the main challenge right now. I think moving forward, once more people own VR headsets at home and have access to this technology or can go somewhere and easily access it, then we could see those types of tools come out. So a school isn't mailing out 400 headsets, but they're mailing out these extra accessories to work with the headset students already have. I would say that's like kind of the main challenge to get there, but it's definitely where the industry is continuing to head towards.
Well, there's also kind of an opportunity, just to respond back to Evan there. We're obviously kind of in the early days when it comes to haptics, but I think that that's part of the equation here as well. I think the mannequins exist in the scenario that Jeffrey presented to create that realism of dealing with, a real, cadaver if the person's passed away, but, interacting with a body basically. And, I think there might be some opportunities, as we start seeing some, groundbreaking changes in haptics to kind of remove that. The concern I had with what Sight said was just that the scenario that they put together in that physical environment took a lot of person power and time and effort, and there was makeup artists and all those types of things. But the scenario that Jeff put together, or his customer put together, also required a dedicated space. It required a lot of setup. There was a lot of physical elements that were staged to make that all work. So, when we're thinking about immersive technology, we should also be thinking about scale. And I think that if we're trying to create that level of realism, I think haptics is going to be certainly a piece that's going to help kind of unlock that scalability.
All right, Jeff, I was giving you a second to talk. To the point on this a little bit, I'll chime in just because I know about some of this research that's been done, again, in terms of doing some very, very realistic simulation training that was a mix of physical environment and virtual environment. I know, on its side, I'm not sure if you've ever seen some of the work that Bob Stone has done out of the UK in terms of, I believe they were doing kind of trauma response training, for soldiers, where they literally simulated, did a physical world simulation of the helicopter that you're in. So essentially, if you're on a helicopter trying to keep a soldier alive, you're working the way that they did it. Again, from what I've seen, is you're working on a mannequin, but you're wearing a VR headset. But there's also physical world things, like there is, a first aid kit, some other stuff that you're dealing with and you're manipulating in the physical world. But I believe they also, effectively made it very loud, as if you're actually in a helicopter. They were kind of moving the floor. They had a platform that I believe was shaking. So the realism that you want to get to, I guess, to a point, it really comes down to, I think, in a lot of cases, what are you trying to train and what are you trying to measure? Like, are you trying to train somebody on just the procedure that they'll be doing? Are you trying to measure how people would respond in a hyper real situation where it's a very, it's a very hard situation to simulate? Obviously you can't put 1,000 people on an actual helicopter and run them through a training scenario like that, in a cost-effective or in a realistic way. And you're trying to train the accuracy of a surgical procedure or a specific medical procedure, something like that. So it really comes down to setting up, like, what is it that you're actually trying to measure? And then when you get to that, it really comes down to, okay, well, what are you trying to measure? What are you trying to change? What's the ultimate goal? And then you always set up a scenario to be optimal for whatever the goal is. Because sometimes maybe you're trying to train somebody on how to do a procedure, but other times maybe you're trying to measure how well people who've been trained on a procedure would be able to, actually complete that procedure when they're under stress. So it really comes out of the situation. And I've seen, again, various levels of different sorts of using that. But I would definitely say, if you're not familiar with any of Bob Stone's work, definitely take a look at it, because I know he's done that in a military capacity. I got the chance over the summer to actually see some pretty cool, very early stage research projects that were being done at Air Force Research Labs, on their gaming research lab at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And one of the ones that really kind of struck me is, again, someone who's been around VR AR for a while now, I've seen a lot of different things. There's not that much that I would say, oh yeah, it's weird for me to come across things that I've never seen before, but they were training, someone created virtual reality training for G-force response. So, a jet fighter pilot, when they're flying one of those planes, they train their body, basically, when they're going to have to fight G-forces as they're, increasing their elevation, they tense their whole body to basically be able to withstand, blacking out during an elevation or a G-force dive, or, again, I'm not sure what the right terminology is, but somebody actually created VR-based training so that it's simulating, visually simulating what you'll be seeing as you're going through one of those maneuvers in a plane. But they created a 3D device, which is almost like a squeeze bar, so that you tense your body correctly to respond to what you'll be doing in the plane. So as they have one hand on a joystick where they're actually controlling the simulation of the plane, they have their other hand on this sort of tense, this thing that's measuring how hard they squeeze it to, because that's simulating for them how you would actually tense your body, before you're going to do the maneuver on the plane, while you're doing it afterwards. Because I guess there's a sort of this optimal, you don't want to tense up yourself too early, or you'll take yourself out. You definitely don't want to do it too late, or you can black out. But it's just a way of using different tools to actually measure something that, a lot of people would probably never even think this is something you could easily simulate or easily train. How do you train a body to respond to G-force without putting them in a G-force environment, where the actual way that they do it is they have those G-force tubes where they're literally spinning somebody around in a centrifuge, essentially, and, physically creating G-forces to train people how to respond to it, which that in and of itself is also a very expensive thing to do, and a very, very expensive, very time consuming, hard to scale. If you can create a simple way to train the basics of it using VR, and then actually, progress from that into the different levels of being able to deliver training, it really comes down to, yes, what's scalable, what's not scalable, how realistic can you get? It's all just measures. It really comes down to what are you trying to accomplish, and what's the best way to do it. Because this is, we're in the early days of the tech, but there's definitely been a lot of advancement, and there's a lot of things being done. I don't know, do you have anything you want to add to that, or should I move to the next one? Because I actually do have another really good question that came through on direct message.
Oh, sure. The only thing I would add is just that what I'm seeing a lot of is that VR and mixed reality doesn't replace the very expensive training altogether, but it allows people to be much more prepared for when they go into a training more expensive that can more mirror the high stress. So, like, just to concrete, like, they're spending like an hour or two in a $10 million simulator instead of 10 hours in it. Because by the time they get to that $10 million simulator, they're super well prepared and familiar with the steps. But there's still a lot of our customers still finish training in something much more elaborate. It's much more able to cue things like it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That actually brings back to some of the training that Level AR is working on with the Space Force in terms of the parachute jumpers who are jumping into rescue astronauts in a space capsule that's landed in the ocean. You know, base of knowledge, having the base of knowledge from training prior to actually going and doing the live training where you're jumping in the ocean and opening up the capsule. Next question, can you, again, someone's DMing me questions. Do you put out opportunities? So this, I guess this is a response to one of the things that was mentioned during one of the presentations, and I frankly can't remember which one of you mentioned it. But you had mentioned that there were opportunities for public to participate in some research, and I guess the question is, do you put out opportunities? Do you publish them or publicize them somehow for, you know, research opportunities for the public to participate in or make money from, and how does the public find out about these opportunities?
Yeah, so I'll jump in here. Basically, over the past year and a half of COVID, we really noticed that researchers, especially at academic institutions that usually rely on students that are at the institution to run research, they couldn't run that research. And that was a lot of our clients, but so many other people that we knew. So at Expert VR, we built our research access portal. And basically, this is a site and now an email list as well, where people can sign up that have a VR headset at home to participate in research studies. And we partner with academic institutions for the most part, but also some enterprise organizations. We tested a game 2 weeks ago, and basically people that are on this list, we send out saying, hey, there's a research study coming up and you're eligible because of the headset you have. And sometimes your demographic, but usually for these research studies, they're just looking for the right headset to run the Unity executable that they have. And this is how much you're paid. We usually start at $15 and up. And yeah, we pay you to go through the research study and answer a survey, or maybe have some data collected as you go through there. And it's a part of our business that we've been really happy to get running over the past year, because it's helped a lot of researchers get their research done throughout COVID.
Giving Tony and Jeffrey a few seconds if they want to jump in. No. Last DM. Well, we'll do the last question, then we'll go back to. Actually, I have a question that I'm going to end it with, but I do have one more question. Actually, no, I'm going to do my question first, and then I'll do one that came through DM again. So the question I have, and I don't know how many of you are familiar, if you're familiar with the UL 8400 standard, which is the safety standard for VR and AR equipment that's currently in the process of being written. I'm actually one of the people who's on the panel writing it, I'll say, but one of the things that we definitely found as we're coming across writing some of these safety standards is that there just isn't a lot of reliable research out there for certain topics like, you know, children using VR equipment, and honestly, elderly people or older people using VR equipment. In terms of, you know, things like whether disorientation takes place, whether, you know, developmental issues take place in terms of eyesight or cognitive capabilities, things like that. And I'm just curious if you guys are starting to see, you know, we've talked a lot about using VR equipment for research on things like, you know, training and on things like retail. And have you guys, you know, I guess, what's your experience in terms of actual research being done on the use of VR equipment and how it affects people? And, you know, especially for those of us who spend a lot of time in VR, frankly, myself included there, like, have you come across any of the research just in terms of how a lot of VR use can affect people either across age ranges or across, you know, performance capabilities or eyesight, anything along those lines?
Really kind of depends on the interest of the institutions or whoever's sponsoring the research. I mean, we see a lot of different types of use cases, and sometimes it comes down to an individual researcher and the thesis that they might be pursuing. One of the ones I'll share with you is some work we did with Purdue University. This was with a Vive Pro Eye, and we did, or they added on a galvanic skin response capability there as well. In that particular study, the researchers were looking for and trying to understand user embodiment within virtual environment when using different forms of avatars. They didn't necessarily explore changes in gender or anything along those lines, but they really wanted to understand how people resonated with, various types of avatars by, putting those in those skins and putting them in front of a mirror. So they came up with a study around that particular topic. They used our platform for the eye tracking as well as collecting the GSR data, and were able to put together a paper in that particular category. So it really kind of just depends on which each of the institutions are interested in. I kind of expect that some of the bigger players, such as Facebook, have the facilities and capabilities to execute upon that research and actually sponsor some of these things. But I don't see a lot of public papers on these topics, to be honest with you. And I wish there was more, just like you had mentioned.
I agree. There definitely needs to be more, and I think it's the standard committees like you're talking about, Matt, and other ones that are out there that are getting together and starting to set those standards instead of they're pulling from the research that's out there, maybe running their own research, but trying to put together a guide for people to follow that has those standards. And a great research that I saw last summer was from Mozilla Hubs, and they were looking at how do we have people ensure that they know that they're in safe spaces while they're in virtual reality. Because right now you're browsing the web and you'll see the HTTPS, for example, and it's a secure URL. And there's other things that because you've been on the internet for so long, what to look out for and what the signals are that this isn't a safe site. But in virtual reality, you don't really have that. So they were testing in this research study different ways of whether there's a symbol that pops up, or they even had digital characters that follow you, and those characters through however they coded them, depending on the environment you go into. If somebody is trying to manipulate what you're seeing or doing, or hacking into your VR headset or whatever it might be that's unsecure, then that digital character changes. So really interesting research on the safety online there. But I think getting those standards set for across the virtual worlds that are being created and how they're being used is something that needs to continue to move forward.
I'm noticing that the one person who actually represents headset manufacturing hasn't spoken yet.
Well,
sure, yeah.
It's a tricky space, especially when it comes to younger people, because like I know our headset minimum IPD is something like so it's going to be pretty difficult for people younger than 12 years old, just in general, to have like what I would call like an intentional mind experience around that. I know that a lot of my only other real exposure to this actually is like human factors teams at the big government primes. They reported a better experience with our headset or other headsets that have kind of high frame rates or better visual reproduction. But otherwise, I don't know. We haven't really studied anything in Vario other than like weight distributions and things like that, or whether people will get like neck or head or muscle strain from having at it. But beyond that, we haven't gone any further.
I'll let you know that we actually have, that is something that I know we considered. I remember looking at that part of the paper in terms of next, weight of the headset. So that did come up.
Who do you think should own it, Matt? Just out of curiosity.
Who should own what? The responsibility to do the research?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously entities out there like the Exeter Safety Initiative and others that are obviously thinking in this direction. I mean, do you think this is a government responsibility? Is it a responsibility of the manufacturers? Like, where do you think this falls?
I'm going to go with, I think it probably should. Let's put it this way. I don't think, whose responsibility is it. I don't want to point that finger necessarily. What I would say is I think it's probably in the manufacturer's best interests to start doing a lot of this research and start publishing a lot on the research. And again, making sure that they are effectively and very transparently hiring third parties that are going to be impartial to do the research versus them producing it themselves, because there are safety standards that are going to start coming into play here. And if I guess if the manufacturers don't take it on to, you know, get interested third parties in doing it neutrally, there's a very good chance someone like the Consumer Protection Safety Commission or something like that is going to do it, and they're potentially not going to be as neutral in the other direction. So, you know, it's one of those things where before the lawsuits start flying, enforce rules, and some of those rules, which I would think probably are going to, you know, overreach and be ineffective and be, you know, almost damaging to some of the stuff that could be done with the hardware. I would say definitely, you know, the Oculuses and the HTCs, and to a certain degree the Varios and some of the other companies that are producing actual hardware, it's probably an issue that I would suggest they would want to get out in front of before someone comes in and puts the rules in front of them that are not necessarily as neutral. That's my thought, but I don't really, you know, I know those of us who are, you know, working with UL right now, we are all trying to be very, you know, it's the balance of you want to make sure that things are safe for people, but at the same time, you don't want to stifle innovation and manufacturers who are just trying to do stuff. Like there are manufacturers who are creating VR headsets that are not meant for research, and they're, you know, they're gaming, and they don't necessarily have to be as high affinity. And you don't want to put rules in place that will keep something like that from hitting the market. But that could happen. You know, I know that there have been conversations about, you know, well, is it safe to have something that doesn't have a fast enough refresh rate? Which, you know, and what is that refresh rate? And again, if there isn't research there, if there isn't enough information for the people who are making a decision on what the standard is, you know, at this point, the big question for a lot of the things that are coming up is, should it be a standard, or should it just be kind of like an informational of, hey, we need more research on this, but this is what we're thinking based on the information we have. I guess that's one of those things that, like I said, I think it would be in the best interest of the manufacturers to really get ahead of it. That's my thought. I don't think it's, you know, I don't ever like to point fingers and say this is your responsibility. At the end of the day right now, if there's not rules, it's the responsibility of the user to make sure that they're, you know, controlling their space, but we all know that people will not necessarily do that.
That's
Yeah, so I was going to say, responding to your comment site, there are several VR research consortiums that are taking place, but again, it's a matter of how well funded they are and who's doing the funding in a lot of cases. With that, I'm going to throw one more quick question. I'll give you guys, you know, just take about 10 seconds if you could, a really quick answer. But what is your kind of wow experience? What is sort of the coolest thing you've seen in either VR or AR? Again, try and keep it somewhat brief, and then we'll get back to open networking. Evan first.
Sure. On the hardware side is definitely Vario. It's just so amazing, the technology that they're building, and jumping into it the first time 2-3 years ago now, was just blown away by how different it was from any other hardware. On the software side, I would say, like I mentioned, Population One. I think it's just so interesting seeing how they're like branching into the entertainment community that is out there in traditional gaming, and the ways that they changed it to make it so immersive and tactile for virtual reality users. So it's something that I played every day for 4 or 5 months, and now I've kind of taken a little bit of a step back. But yeah, those are the two experiences that have really blown my mind.
Going to seem a little bit like an infomercial for Vario, but I think that the XR3 is probably the most substantial experience I've ever had in a VR headset. It was one thing to, you know, be up in the hotel room when these guys were just showing off their dev kit and, you know, jerry rigging software to get running to try to get this kind of human resolution stuff up and going. It's another thing to be able to kind of blend real world with virtual augmentation over top of it, and the work they did with Volvo and the helicopter simulations that have been put together as well are really incredible, and kind of sort the line between reality and simulation. So I think that that's probably the most, you know, surprising thing I've seen.
Oh shucks, guys, that's so nice of you to say. I've got two, I guess. NASA showed me an analog experience that they built that was like a training experience, but it was basically like a full square acre of high-res photogrammetry. thought that was pretty amazing. And then we work with a company called Touch of Life Technologies that has these full high resolution body scans of like every component of the human body. And when I first saw that, it really blew my mind. They partnered with the Visible Human Project and showed me like something that could be truly really valuable and useful in
Excellent. Well, so I'm gonna, first of all, let me apologize to everyone who's watching the side screens right now because I'm gonna slam through a lot of slides really quick. So apologies for the jittery that you're gonna see there, because I do want to point out our next 3 topics for the next 3 months, or at least the next 2 months, November and December, the remainder of this year, and apologies for misspelling December as well. We'll be covering education and storytelling, and there's lots of aspects to storytelling within virtual reality. We'll get to that. Everything from gaming and actually having the narrative within a game to storytelling in terms of the news versus storytelling within an educational environment. All sorts of different concepts of storytelling. And education seems to be one that we taught, that's one of the ones that we do every year just because there is so much in education and we're always trying to hit all sorts of different aspects of it. But those are the upcoming topics for the next few months. We hope you will join us again. I do want to thank our panelists today, which I will do right now. Thanks, guys. I would ask you all to actually keep standing here for 1 second because I made the mistake earlier of asking everybody in the room to please, just kind of form around me. And the one thing I realized is that for those of the people who are ever watching this on Facebook Live, you guys can see the stage view, but you really can't see everyone else in the room. So at this time, before I officially end the live stream, if you're in the room, please come and join me, because I would like the people on Facebook Live to start to see the crowd of people that we actually have in the room here. And the fact that there are other people, not just the 4 of us who are in the room. So please come and join me really quickly, and we'll do one more really kind of quick round of applause and a thank you to our presenters. And as soon as I see this coming through on the live event, which I'm starting to see it show up there now, I'll end it and I'll just say, there's still some people sitting around in the room, but that's okay. I will just say thank you once again. We hope to see you guys in the next month. Again, thanks to our presenters. We're not kicked out of the room yet. Please stick around and do some informal networking and talk to some people. Evan, I definitely need to talk to you about Popcorn. But once again, thank you, everybody. And I'm going to stop the live stream right now. So for those of you on Facebook, thanks for joining us. And we will see you again soon next month. Thank you very much. Let me stop streaming as soon as I see the transition to happen. There's always about a 10-second delay, so I'll just keep talking. And as soon as I see that transition come through, there we go. I can stop streaming.